Shang Chi was coming out, I really didn't feel anything because I don't know the character. I've never heard of it in comic book form or otherwise. So for me, it was just going to be one of those situations where I would learn about a new character and I would probably hate or like the character. What I read up about Shang-Chi is that he was a skilled martial artist who was trained at a young age to be an assassin by his father, Wenwu. Shang-Chi left the Ten Rings organization to try and live a normal life in San Francisco. So why am I sitting here talking about a character I really don't know anything about, and my first exposure to this character is gonna be through a movie by Marvel Studios? Well, because it's there, and I can talk about it. One of the things that I noticed people were saying, and I've seen on the Chinese channel, is that they are kind of mixed review about this movie, or based on the trailer, they don't seem to like it, and most of the complaints I see people having is that Tony Leung should have been the main character because the main character who is playing Shang-Chi is less charismatic than Tony Leung. Someone even said it really doesn't look good. Find an actor who at least does not look like a supporting role. Some people say they're only going to see the villain, who I'm guessing is Tony Leung. Another person said this will be the first Marvel movie to let me into the theater, or that I want to go into the theater specifically to watch the villain. And that's totally fine. I completely understand it. Remember that Chinese culture is different. Well, actually, not so different, because if somebody looks plain Jane and ordinary in even Western culture movies, people look at the characters and they're like, ugh, gross. Why do I want a character that looks like an everyday person or looks like me? I want someone who I can aspire to be, who has charisma, who looks banging, who has a six-pack, and not just an undefined sheet of paper. Now, a lot of people were also saying that they made this movie to pander to China. I don't see how. You can find a lot of reasons to agree to that and say it's not coincidence. Maybe so, but Shang-Chi is actually a real character, a real Marvel character from what I know. So, I mean, why is it so far-fetched that they would push this to the forefront? Especially from a business standpoint, they can stand to make a lot of money if they focus on a character with a different ethnicity. The thing is, a lot of people have this misconception that when Marvel makes these kind of movies, they're making it specifically so China can see it. From a business standpoint, it would be great for them to say, hey, you want representation? Here it goes. But actual China, international Chinese people don't really want that. They want something that they can relate to. Now, as for the Western culture, which this movie, let's face it, it's being made specifically for people of the Western culture. It's not that big of a deal. I don't see the draw there because a lot of people will probably say, well, it's Marvel, so I'll go see it anyway. But then there are people who will see it and they'll be like, I just don't want to go to the theaters to watch that because I don't know that character. For many like me, that will be the reason that I go, because I like learning about new Marvel characters or superhero characters in general. And honestly, it's not like I have the time to sit down and read a whole bunch of comics like I used to. Well, graphic novels. I never really sat down, read comics. But if I had the time and I could go back, I definitely would. My main reason I didn't want to get invested into something and then found out that I couldn't finish it, that would kill me and distract me from everything else. So that was my primary reason. But you can't expect people of a different culture to react exactly the same way that a totally different culture reacts when they see something. Most people that I know of in the West do like the trailer. They say it looks cool, they want to know more about it, but if you go to the Chinese culture, you know, in China, they're like, nah, I don't want to see that. That looks stupid. Why is the main character that person? I will say though, I can see why people really like Tony Leung. I'm not familiar with anything else he plays in. I might have seen him in something else, but I haven't watched enough of his movies if he has played in other stuff, but he looks like a badass. He looks like the kind of person that he looks at you, and if you're not keeping your shit together, you'll spice it up real quick. His face just commands respect. His attitude commands respect. I don't know who any of the characters are to each other, but I do like the trailer a lot. The colors pop. I like the action scenes. I think I've seen better choreography, though, in other martial arts movies. But hey, if they can make this a good time, it is what it is. I know people are worried about this movie doing well, because a lot of the box office is going to depend on whether or not it does well in China, but maybe it's just me, and maybe my take is going to be one that's really out there. But if movies are made in the West, isn't it about time that we start to make movies for the Western audience so that they can become dependent solely, if not primarily, on the Western audience? You know, especially considering the hoops that have to be jumped through, like the shrinking of a black man's face in Star Wars just so it can sell in China. I feel like that's kind of going backwards. That's just me though. When China or any other foreign country makes movies for their people, they make movies for their country. And if you happen to enjoy it, you happen to enjoy it. The amount of movies that aim to directly please outside nations are almost non-existent. If you can still enjoy Korean movies and they're made for Korean audiences, anime made for Japanese audiences, or Japanese movies made for Japanese audiences, Spanish movies made for people who can relate to that, why is it that America seems to be the only one who is so concerned with pleasing everybody else. You can't. Cultures are so different. You can appreciate each other's culture. Like, I appreciate Korean culture. I love Korean culture. And I know a lot of Koreans who also appreciate American culture, but a lot of them don't give up their identity or their cultural identity to please Americans. Even if they were born here, the family unit is so close, especially with Chinese Americans, that you can see the pride that they wear in knowing this is where I came from and I'm gonna keep my culture alive. While the movies those countries produce are part of their culture. I get it, from a business standpoint, that's great, but I don't think people are looking at things from the long run, because at some point you're gonna start to please other cultures more than you please your own, and then you find that there's a huge disconnect with people from your own country that they don't even want to buy or see your movies anymore. And what starts to happen is they're like, okay, well, the Western movies are just absolute shit now. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start to find our entertainment somewhere else. Since they're too busy trying to please everybody else, let's find something that we actually like anime or K-dramas. And then you wonder why anime does so much better. I mean, like, leagues above so many Hollywood or Western titles, to the point where they're getting kind of offended over it. It's because when people make anime, at least from what I could see, all the anime that I've watched so far, they're just making art. It's how things used to be in the US. They're not thinking, ooh, this will please the Americans. They don't really give a shit about that. Sometimes they'll add in American characters because, for whatever reason, they think it's cool. And that person who's American will still talk about their culture, like in Food Wars or My Hero Academia. You can tell which characters are American. You can tell in anime which characters are American, and they usually are wearing colors that are indicative of them coming from the USA, or something in the way they speak or their background tells you this person's from Italy, this person's from Germany, in their culture they do this, in their culture they do that. But I don't see anime going out of their way to do that. Most of what they make is just the story, and it's what Japanese people can relate to. So I think Americans should still keep doing that. Like, you'd be surprised if a lot of Americans are dumping their money to go and watch anime or to buy manga from a completely different culture. I mean, you gotta figure the Japanese are making money off of their own people and Americans, and the Japanese aren't trying to please Americans. You see how that works? Chinese people will watch a lot of American films that aren't trying to go out of their way to please the Chinese people. Not saying that's what they're doing with Shang Chi, but it's just something for us to keep in mind. All right, enough of that stupid monologue. What do you guys think about the Shang Chi trailer? Do you know the character? Do you have hope that they're gonna portray him accurately? Like I said, this is a first for me, so I'm going in it completely with virgin eyes. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Ultiori. You ask, we answer.